grant is called Teaching is the Core. The thing that does distinguish the Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES grant is that we designed this program with the leadership of the participating districts. This matches the vision of the participating districts. So the goal of the TITC grant is really to improve the quality of local assessments while at the same time reduce the number of assessments. Your work as a team member is to review a set of local assessments, then to create an action plan. And really the action plan is about deciding what stays, what goes, and what gets revised or created.
This morning our team was asked to sit and analyze our assessments. And we had artifacts from throughout the year to look at. And they ended up really encouraging conversation amongst colleagues. And I'd say one of the big themes from this morning is that you don't have to stop your teaching and student learning just to assess kids. That it's more of a process for assessment. It's not just a single event.
Often parents and sometimes teachers, when they hear the word assessment, they think test. It's important to remember that teachers use all different types of assessment at different times during the learning process. Teachers use products, demonstrations, quizzes, and tests. All of these are assessments. Some are informal and some are more formal. For example, some teachers' assessments are informal. Like a teacher listens in on a group of students talking and can tell whether they're understanding something or not. That's an informal assessment right there. Or a student completes a journal entry. That's an informal assessment. And then there are more formal assessments like a quiz or a test or a project that a student has to work on and submit. So one of the important things to understand about this work is that we're looking at the repertoire of assessments, at all kinds of assessments, not just the tests that are paper and pencil, answer a lot of questions, or perform on demand in a certain amount of time.
The students are working on a project called Modeling a Miniature Train. This has been a fairly involved project. They've been working on it for 4 weeks, and it'll comprise most of their grade for the fourth quarter. Students were given a detailed list on the first day of the project of exactly what they would need. About halfway through, they were given a detailed checklist, and then the final rubric that they're working on right now, they were given today. That allows them to add scores for each other and include comments.
Your consortium is very interested in assessment that produces learning. So the assessments that produce learning are the ones that are in the midst of instruction, because kids actually get feedback from the teacher. Then they use the feedback to work again and revisit their work and get better at something.
Getting help from partners sort of gives me the opportunity to see what they did and then compare it to my own to see if they have better ideas than mine or if I could help them in some way. It sort of just gives you an idea of what other options are for your project.
This consortium's been working on the assessment that happens in the midst of learning, just like a coach would coach in the midst of a game. When a coach gets a team ready for play, they do lots of teaching and coaching and practice, right? And then the big game happens. And during the big game, the coach continues to talk to kids, continues to give them feedback, pull them aside, tell them what they're doing well, tell them what they need to do differently. So that's assessment that produces learning because it's in the midst of the game. The coach just doesn't sit back and let them play the whole game without saying a word to them. That would be an assessment like a test, where you just give the kids something to do and it's hands off. Feedback has to come in the midst of learning when kids can use the feedback to get better.
Feedback is important because it helps students to understand where they are with their knowledge, their understanding of a topic. It helps them to develop their skills in writing, thinking, processing information and new ideas. And feedback also provides them a chance to see where they need to grow and areas that they need to develop growth in.
The research tells us what kind of feedback will produce learning. Descriptive feedback, specific feedback that's focused on the goals of the learning, that kind of feedback moves kids along and helps them to get more skilled. So first tell me, what is a criteria for success?
A criteria for success is when you make a chart of things that you want to accomplish in your writing, and what a criteria for success helps you do is help your writing get better and better.
You try to make it better by seeing what else you can add, and that really helps me so I know what I can add and what I didn't have the first time.
And it also says it in the name, criteria for success. We use it so we can get success.
What I think is important is that we define what quality feedback is for students. We're so used to talking about grades as motivation and feedback being just good job, good boy, good girl, smart girl, that kind of thing. And what the research tells us is that we have to get away from this idea that grades are the way that we can get kids smarter and praise is the way that we can get kids smarter. What gets kids smarter is that we give specific feedback that's relevant, that's important, that actually moves them forward.
Even as a parent myself, I've learned that it's more important to say to my child, I'm less focused on the grade you received today, and I'm more focused on the process that got you there and how that process can make you a better student.
So teachers give feedback in lots of different ways. They give feedback verbally while they work with students. They give feedback in the form of written notes when they write to students or write on student work. They give students opportunities to get feedback from each other. So peer-to-peer feedback can be a piece of the feedback work in the classroom. And then there's also self-feedback, when students are asked to look at their work against a set of criteria or against a checklist or a rubric. That's considered self-feedback, and that kind of feedback is also valuable. Teachers use checklists and rubrics in classrooms to help kids to know what the goals are.
I have been doing an activity with my kids for a long time where they read a story and they respond in a reading response journal, and I critique them that they don't seem to implement any of the strategies I'm encouraging them to do. So what I did was I developed a checklist and I had the children assess themselves, and after they've evaluated themselves, they had a peer evaluate them. They evaluated the peer, and then they took their work home and they made revisions, and I can't even tell you how wonderful the outcomes were just after doing it one time. I was thrilled.
What is the purpose of checking our own journals? How come Mrs. Ryan doesn't check your journals anymore like I used to?
You want us to get more involved with our work, like more involved with our corrections and really get focused on it by editing each other's.
So when teachers are using rubrics, they are describing the quality of something at different levels.
We used this rubric to understand what we needed to receive the grade that we wanted, and we also used it to know what was required in the project itself, what was absolutely needed if you wanted a good grade, and it gave us what we knew would be on it.
I used this rubric because we were writing an essay, and the rubric guided me through this process because I was able to check off every step along the way that I already accomplished. The combination of this rubric and my paper helped my essay become stronger so I could get a better grade.
I think for me it helps to organize and sort of drive my instruction. It's like a checklist. I can prioritize and kind of look at where the project's headed or where their product is headed, and be able to check in and say, okay, this is clearly where they're still lacking. I need to go back and do a little bit more work on this. So it really, every day I kind of look at it. I'm in the middle of a project where I'm using one right now, and it really helps to organize where I need to focus more or where they really hit the mark.
So there isn't a single assessment that this consortium has designed that doesn't allow kids to get feedback while they're working. That to me is the most important thing that we've done.